Ready, Aaron? Yeah. Yep. Yep. Fred's gonna take notes for us up here, so. Fred Bull. Yeah. Morning, everyone. I'd like to get started. We have a very finite amount of time here, unlike other meetings, which we could carry on past. We have the second service, so. If you could, there are some things to eat and drink over there. Help yourself. We are passing around a sign-in sheet. Please make sure you sign in. But since we are a community of faith, let's begin with prayer. Gracious Lord, your generosity knows no bounds. Lead us in discerning the Holy Spirit moving among us as we strive to be open and receptive to your calling. Guide us in prayerfully considering the information offered today. Help shape the priorities of the ministry we share. Give us courage and generosity that helps us to discover that all things are possible in you. Inspire each of us to commit ourselves to this effort, that together we may discover the fullness of your blessings, for the sake of strengthening our work as a congregation that is done in your name and according to your calling. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So thank you so much for being here. So we have two basic areas that we're going to cover. First is to present the current leadership thoughts on a potential capital campaign. And then we want your feedback on those thoughts. We've designed this presentation to hopefully answer most of your questions. So please hold your questions till the end. And I just went through the slide. And thank you for attending. So we are a congregation of about 1,200 members. We have a weekly attendance of around 300 people at worship. And we have a growing education Sunday school ministry. We're also part of a community that's poised to grow. There's an estimated 4,500 households expected to be added in our area over the next 15 years. Let's review our mission statement. So we are saved by grace, led by the Spirit, and called to serve. I think you'll see as we go through this that how we apply the call to serve and how we use our facilities to carry out that mission. There we go. So in 2002, we had our last capital campaign. So we added the footprint out to the east with the friendship room, the classrooms downstairs, the elevators, bathrooms, and we remodeled some other areas. Ultimately, it's the people that's the church. I think that's really important to remember. And the facility we have here is really an asset we use to carry out God's mission. And we are very proud of this facility, and I think we use it really well. My aim is off. There we go. So it's heavily used by us. We have many ministries that are here at all hours of the day. In 2002, we committed to sharing this blessing of the additional space with the community, and we've done a great job of that. Our facilities are heavily used by our community, Oregon. The school district uses it for many different events. We use it for the road home. Scouts, both Boy and Girl Scouts, meet here regularly. And the Oregon Preschool Incorporated is here throughout the school year. We also use it very heavily for charity events such as the Fish Fry and Smorgasbord. I think it's fair to say there's no other congregation in Oregon that uses and shares their facility like we do. I think it's also important that we were recognized for our position in leadership in terms of the vulnerable and poor. In 2014, we were honored, St. John's was honored by joining forces for Families for Dane County for the work we do with the vulnerable and poor. So let's talk a little bit about our facility. The roof is tired. On the picture off to the right, this is the sanctuary roof. That's the sanctuary roof. And the black is showing signs of wear. It's 5 years past its life expectancy, so it's in need of repair or replacement. The HVAC is tired, so the mechanical part, the heating system was added in when this facility was created, when the sanctuary was created in 1982. So it's 35 years old. So I think we can say we've been blessed to get it to last that long. One big drawback is it's only 65% efficient. So we're losing money compared to what a new piece of equipment would produce. The air conditioning is also old. It was added in 1992, and it's also past its life expectancy. And we're told that repairing it is really not going to be an option. We're going to have to replace it. Our mortgage is tired. So we have around $760,000 for our mortgage. We pay $60,000 a year to cover the principal and interest payments. That's a lot of money that could be going to help many families build the ministry of this church. So those three things, the roof, the HVAC, and our debt are our three highest priorities to address. In 2012, driven by some, or maybe inspired by some issues with the lighting, there was a task force created to look at the sanctuary needs. And I think you're going to see a lot of those recommendations are found in our ideas going forward. One of the things they talked about was the lighting in here is inadequate. It's very dim. The lighting actually casts very much straight down. It creates shadows on faces. I don't know if I'm well lit here or not, but no. I'm not. Yes, yeah, that's guaranteed, right? But if you're up speaking, publicly speaking, and you're trying to read the room, it makes it very difficult to know how your audience is feeling. There's very little natural light. We know light affects our mood. I certainly enjoy being in the sunlight, and I think there's an opportunity to really increase the mood of this room. The layout was another thing that was brought up during that 2012 group, is that it's confusing for visitors. If you're sitting over on the side, it's difficult to know where to go and how to get back to your seat during communion. And then the pews themselves are wearing out. Underneath, the fabric is not hardwood. It's particle board or something like that, pressed board. And it's wearing out, and our pews need to be replaced. The sanctuary was designed in a time of one style of worship, where the pastor's up front and we have one piece of music off to the side. Today's styles vary greatly. And it's a struggle for some of our ministry teams to implement ideas to improve our worship, because we're fixed into this one style of seating. The audiovisual system, it is getting us through and doing its job, but it was piecemealed together. And I think it's short of what we could do. Makes it difficult to communicate through today's technologies. You'll see in a little bit there's a slide with multicolors that really do not appear to be different from each other. That's because of our projectors are wearing out, or they're underpowered.
Yeah, there's only 1,500 lumens and we really need 5,000 for a projector.
Okay, so underpowered projectors. And the other piece of that is, again, this was designed, the sanctuary layout was designed at a time when the AV wasn't a priority. And so where we actually have the control board is probably the worst place we could have in the sanctuary. Youth and family ministries. So that's been a focus for us over the last couple of years. And it's been growing. We're very excited about that. One thing we would like to be able to do is use the friendship room, the space that was created in 2002 for large gathering and learning, and there's some difficulties with that. The space has poor acoustics, so there's echoing that goes on, and there's no specific AV system for that, so I think those are two areas where we can make our ministry a little bit better. We'd like to add a security system or improve the security of the building. Our facility is kind of segregated, right? And so if you're down in the basement late at night, you really don't know what's going on up in the main part of the building. And so there's a feeling of insecurity there. So we'd like to address that and just in general improve the security of this facility so that people are confident and feel safe to be here. Another area of opportunity is some space for adult learning. Again, we've done a great job of building the Sunday school ministry, and we're using the space, all the space for the children. And so it makes it hard for us to find space for adults to learn during that time. So that's an area of an opportunity. One idea is, and this was brought up by the team in 2012, is adding a chapel. So the space here is great for large groups, but if you're trying to have an intimate setting for worship or a funeral or a wedding, you just really need an intimate space. And this doesn't provide that. And that space could also could be used as an adult learning space. We also would like to improve the nursery. We want a space where parents just are completely confident and feel well about leaving their children there if they need to go to worship. And there's opportunities in terms of furnishings and equipment, so that's another idea. Another idea is a resource for books. There's no longer a Christian bookstore in Madison. And if people are trying to find ways to examine their faith and grow, books is one way to do it. And it would be nice to have a space where people can review books to possibly purchase or borrow. It's up for Aaron. Yeah, that's why I can't remember that slide. I'm going to pass it off to Aaron. Thank you, Aaron.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Aaron Johnson. For those of you who don't know me, my wife and family and I have been members here since 2003, maybe-ish, something like that. And thank you guys very much for being here. I see so many people that I know, and just very, very pleased to be able to have a chance to talk with you guys about this today. And before I say anything else, if you want to know how to go about your life and be successful at leading a congregation, you don't need to look any farther than right over here, Jeff Fisher. He's the president of our congregation, right? Yeah. So I'm going to put Jeff. Jeff makes this very, very easy for me because he kind of lays out the issues at hand, and I'm just going to put a little meat on the bones of the plans and hopefully let you know what we've been thinking about and help you understand what hasn't been decided, because I think we hear about this kind of program and there's a tendency for some, myself included, to think, well, it's already baked in the cake. Everything is already decided, and I have no say over this. That's the whole reason you're here. It's because we honestly, really, and truly want to hear your thoughts about what I'm about to share and what Jeff has shared, and about whether or not to do this. The point that we're at right now is, will the congregation vote to support to have a capital campaign or not have a capital campaign? That's the question at hand, and that's why you're here to learn a little bit about this. So by way of background, back in 2015, a group met to sort of lay out the mission and vision, which Jeff shared with us, and just check under the hood a bit and see if that was still salient, and if it was still if there were things about our church that were helping us or hindering us from fully achieving that mission and vision. And we uncovered a few things that were pertaining to our building that really were not helping us be the best at achieving our mission and vision. And that's where a lot of this need for capital projects came up. So this past January, 10 months ago-ish, we had a congregational meeting, our annual meeting, and we took sort of an informal sort of straw poll and said, is there an interest in the congregation to pursuing this idea that, maybe we need a capital campaign to address some of these things? And the vote was overwhelmingly yes, that there was an interest in us continuing to pursue that. And so based on that vote, we've done a couple things. We've engaged with, let me say it in this order. Back in April then, we had this, I was a part of this, and it was just amazing. We had kind of an all hands on deck, all ministry meeting. We met in the friendship room, and there were tables, and there were Post-it notes and note cards, and people kind of hunched over, in groups. And the question that was put to all the ministry teams was, in terms of the ministry that you are responsible for or passionate or a part of, what are the things that you understand could be made better about the church, about the building, about the resources, about the building, how it looks, how it works. And let's throw these all out on the table. And we brainstormed, and there was a jillion ideas. That's not an actual mathematical number. That's a turn of phrase. And then what we did, we got all these ideas out, and then as a group, we said, of all these ideas, where are the priorities? And we all kind of, as leaders of the ministries here at church, we all sort of took a look and we said, yes, this is the top priority. This is a middle priority. This is maybe, a nice to have priority. And what fell out of this meeting, this wonderful spirit-filled meeting, was what I'm going to show you here right this minute. We have a three-tiered approach. And one of the things, and I'm going to say this maybe a few times, but one of the things that's important for you all to know is, as part of this initial phase of whether to have the campaign or not have the campaign, we're not attaching to that any idea that, if we have the campaign, we're definitely going for just tier 1. Or if we have the campaign, we're going for tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, right? We're not saying that. All we're asking is that we would like a chance to have the campaign and raise as much money as we can. So here's the plan. Everybody got this? That's pretty good, right? That's a good visual, isn't it? Let me help a little bit. We have 3 tiers. This is the minimum tier, and I'm going to break this down for you in further detail, but I want you to see on this graphic where our priorities are. We have this minimum tier, and this would be the first set of things, as far as our plans go right now, that we would take care of, and I'll tell you what's in this in a minute. But these are the things that if not taken care of, will prove deleterious or disadvantageous to us worshiping here and doing our community as we do it. The second tier is, we call it intermediate, is the word we're using. So it's minimum and then intermediate, which is, and it's important to know that these are additive, okay? So if we're talking about this intermediate section here, it's the minimum stuff and then the intermediate stuff on top of that. And largely, what this is a revisioning or a revamping or retooling of our sanctuary space. We've already heard about the lighting, and we've heard about the chancel area, and the non-flexibility of our seating, and the kind of confusing nature of the layout. So those are a lot of the things that we will take care of or will address should we get to this intermediate piece. And by way of example, these are supposed to be 2 different colors. So, imagine, if you will, those are 2 different colors. And then the third tier is this what we're calling the challenge. And this is the reach. This is the part where we say, where we dream and say, can you imagine? Wouldn't it be nice if we could have this? And I failed to mention this. You can think of this middle part as we want to do some always we want to do some growth, and we want to do some improvement in the current ministries and in the current way we worship and the things we're able to offer. And that's that middle tier. And then that third tier, that challenge tier, that's the piece here where we dream a little bit. So as I said, it's not a process right this minute to vote on or determine, well, we're just going to go for the minimum, or we're going for the full enchilada. I went to a Mexican restaurant last night, so I have that in my head. All we're asking is that you allow us to raise as much money as we can and do the things with that money that we're thinking about here that I'm describing. And as I failed to mention, I did this talk last night and I failed to mention, I'm an architect and I've been practicing architecture since the 1900s. That's the last century. And except for the recession, which was very much an anomalous event, things don't get cheaper. Okay, I've not seen, and George, you can attest maybe as a professional engineer, things just don't get cheaper. And so by doing this now, we do this in 10 years, and the cost is not going to be cheaper, in my opinion, in my professional opinion. So let's go back and take a look at the minimum. This is the if you want to think of these as the must-dos, that's fine. These are the things that if we don't act proactively now, we're going to have to act in an emergency fashion at some other point in time. So here are the four things. And I guess it's a little disingenuous to say that the mortgage, which is on here, that we'll have to act in an emergency fashion. But I've heard from so many people what a concern this mortgage is, and so I think it's very, very clear that that's one of the things that needs to be in this top tier. But at any rate, it's the furnace and the air conditioning, which which were put in. The furnace was put in the 80s, and the air conditioning, I don't know, maybe in the 90s. Yeah, very good, 1991. They're very, very tired, as Jeff said. This is a cool picture of the scary furnace room down in the basement, if you've never been down there. Like I said, as a professional, I'm just going to go ahead and say this is not the best thing we can do. That's not the way it was intended to be installed, right? So we haven't had any or much leaking issues on our roof right now, but we've done some kind of Band-Aid type repairs, but these things have finite lives, okay? And I will bet you all the money in my left-hand pocket if we don't act on the furnace. It's not going to be a balmy day in early September when it goes out. It's going to be the middle of February, right? And then we'll be in a pinch. The roof, and then the security system. I want to mention quickly about the security system. Again, don't think that this is all completely baked in the cake. We're going to have CCTV cameras, and we're going to have laser beams, and everybody's going to have a card to swipe in and swipe out of the. We don't know. All we know is that it's an issue, and that when we're here and when our loved ones are here, we want them to feel safe. It's a big building, and when you are here, you need to be in the moment with your thoughts and with your faith and growing that faith. And if the last 15% of your brain says, "Did I hear something upstairs?" That's not what we want. We want just people to feel safe here, and so we recognize a need for that. Here's the middle section again. And by and large, it has to do with the sanctuary and the improvements to our sanctuary. We've talked about the lighting, and I'm going to show you maybe an illustrative picture about that in a minute. We've talked about the stage, or I don't like this word stage, but we continue to use it, the chancel area. And we have so many worship leaders at this point in time. We have the pulpit and the altar, and then there's organ and piano, and coming up in a little bit there's going to be a band, and there's going to be special music, and there's a choir, and there's handbells. And look at all the space we're using right now to kind of piecemeal the worship leaders, the people that are guiding us through the most important time of our week in terms of Christians. It's very much scattered, and we would like that kind of brought together symbolically and practically to create a better worship experience. The AV we talked about, and I'm going to talk about the flexible seating just in a minute here. But here are the example pictures. This is not our church, but it's a church that was similarly challenged as ours. And you can see here, same kind of lighting. And, you know, we have some stained glass, but really limited opportunity for natural light to work its way into the church. People are drawn to natural light. It's not to go off on a tangent, but it's a psychological phenomenon known as biophilia. It means that we're drawn to nature, right? And which church would you rather worship in? That's the same church, by the way. Okay, that's the after picture. Okay, and it's just amazing to me what a difference proper lighting and proper access to natural light can do for us. We're all kind of very used to this, but I think people who have come, and Pastor will say, people who have come here have really commented on it. Like, yeah, you know, you guys seem like nice community, but your worship space is just a little dour. And so we want to hopefully fix that. Here's a picture of a possible concept or an illustrative concept of kind of a more unified chancel area. The AV piece definitely will address. This is the piece I want to talk about just a little bit. So flexible seating, right? Believe me, I'm a purist. I like pews. I grew up with church with pews, and pardon me, I think those are fantastic. And if you take a look at what we have here, these pew chairs they're a hook. They hook together. They're gangable, right? And so when they're together, they look and feel and move like pews. You know, you're not going to have an antsy 5-year-old like my girls, you know, jostling around in between the rows and pushing things, and it's not going to look like, you know, the end of a concert when it's all over. They're sturdy together. But the point is, if we would want to have a synod event here, a clergy leadership or a study event, or if we want to worship differently during Lent, or if we want to have, you know, any kind of different ideas of community events here, right now we have to sort of put that round idea into this square space. And wouldn't it be nice if we could react, if our physical space could react to all the best, you know, the best thinking and the best ideas that are happening here. I see myself, our worship leaders' vision and really, you know, do their calling so wonderfully, and think of, you know, well, what if we had worship this way? And all I want is for them to have a space that can adapt and help them realize those visions, because those visions for worship are really for us, for you all, for me. Okay, this is the third section. This is the reach, this is the dream, this is the challenge section. And so I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but I want to point out a few, because Jeff did a really good job of kind of, again, you know, teeing this up for me. But I want to first start and talk about this. We have an opportunity to maybe do a little bit of a solar array on our roof. And I think certainly as an architect and a creative professional, but also as a Christian, I will say, this is my opinion, I will say that we have an absolute calling to be good stewards of our creation. And you know, the fossil fuels that are largely powering the electricity that we get, they're finite, and the carbon that creates, I don't think that's doing a great service to our planet. And as stewards of God's creation, I think it's important for us to consider non-fossil fuel and renewable sources of energy. The number here, cost savings over a quarter, 25 years here, that's almost $250,000. I will say that the payback on, right? These things are not free, right? You don't just go pick these up, just because someone's being nice. The payback on these, to make our money back on those savings, it's about 8 or 9 years-ish, right? And so after that period of time then we start to reap those benefits financially, but we also reap the benefits of knowing, that we're doing the right thing for our planet as God's chosen stewards. Let's see. The friendship room. How many people went to the last cross-gen Sunday school event? 2. Okay. Of 3. All right. Of those 3, was it easy to hear? No. Was the AV, the visuals, the video, was that clear and crisp and right? I mean, it was kind of suboptimal, right? Is that fair to say, or am I putting words in your mouth? Yes, maybe. Everybody's sort of hoping I don't come over and single them out. They're nodding yes. A solution for that a better solution for that would be better. Talked about the security issue. Here's one thing that I need to do for myself. This right here, this 3-car garage for storage to replace the 2 sheds. I think the title of this is a little bit misleading, and I think that's why. In previous versions of this talk, I said, yes, we're going to have a 3-car garage, and maybe we'll even buy some vehicles, and we'll put those in there, and the church will have cars to. That's not what the plan is, okay? There's no plans right now in any of this to be purchasing cars or minibuses or vehicles or any of that. The idea of this is that we have a lot of community organizations, whether you know it or not, that we let use our outbuildings. You can see sometimes after worship, scouts are out there doing, getting their scouting things, their, jackknives and their flints and whatever. And we have a lot of gear that we use to maintain our grounds here. And we just want a better facility for storing our gear and for allowing our community organizations to come in and have a spot there. And that's what's important to us. In terms of the chapel, Jeff really hit it out of the park with that description. This is a great space. It's a great space for Sunday morning. It's a great space on Easter and Christmas Eve. But on a cold February Saturday night, when we have 20 people here, 30 people, we want something that's intimate, and we want something where we can really feel the presence of God with us. And something that's a little more intimate like that, I think, really facilitates that. Architecturally, I think it facilitates your mood and the sense that you have when you walk into a space. A very small funeral, an intimate wedding. How many, was it a big wedding yesterday? Or 80 people. Okay, so, that's kind of on the cusp, but.
So these 2 sections were about 3/4 full.
Okay, so you can kind of see, what if you have, 50 or 40, then what? And then I think those are the big things that I really would want to point out, because Jeff talked a lot about the other stuff there. There are some soft costs associated with this. We have hired and are engaged with a fundraising consultant. His name is Steve Havey. And Steve is wonderful. He knows what to do. He's very sure of himself. We checked him out. We vetted him with multiple congregations, and more often than not, every time we called, they said, yeah, it's like the best money we ever spent to engage with Steve, because he knows how to do this, and he was just a blessing to us. Should we go ahead with design work? Architects have to eat too, so they charge a little bit of money. And then, because we don't want to wait, I'm going to show in a minute the timeline here, but because we don't want to wait for the full 5-year of the giving portion of this, we would take out a construction loan to get the work done presently, and there would be a bit of interest that would be paid on that construction loan itself. So here are the numbers. I don't want to focus too terribly much on the numbers, but I want you to see these and understand kind of what the thinking is. We're in round numbers. We're between $1 million and $3 million. Okay, and you can generate some thoughts and questions based on that, or not. And by the way, if you have your little slip of paper there, many of you are using just to take your own notes. But if you generate questions which you want answered, but you don't want to raise your hand and answer them, use those those note slips to write some questions, and we'll make sure they get answered. But I believe if we come together, we can make a lot of these things a possibility. I really believe that we can head off at the pass any sort of coming tragedies in terms of our facilities, and I believe we can address a lot of this other stuff too to make our community the best, most welcoming, most spirit-filled place possible. And this is just a rehashing of some of the things we've said, but I want to take a minute and point out this last piece here. At the end of, should we go ahead with this campaign, one of the big goals for us is at the end of it to have zero debt. And our debt right now, we are paying about $60,000 a year to the bank on this mortgage. And I am just beside myself if I think about what our church could do with an extra $60,000 toward ministry. I just, the mind just wanders. Secondarily, I want to say that there are no plans to say, let's go back one. There are no plans to say, son of a gun, I'm having button anxiety. There we go. There are no plans to say, well, here are the numbers, and we're going to raise, if we only raise $1 million, we're just going to do it all anyway, and we're going to saddle ourselves with another chunk of humongous debt. That's not the plan. The plan is to raise as much money as possible and do with that what we are able. Okay, and remember, in that first must-do tier, part of that is paying off our previous mortgage for the friendship room. So that's a mission critical piece for us. Okay, so I said before, we're not committing to any one of these three, scopes of work. We're just asking, us to try to raise as much money as possible and then move forward. And it's worth pointing out, should we have the capital campaign before we actually went ahead and committed to doing any of the work, there would be an additional congregational meeting to say, okay, we've raised this much money. Here are the things we think we're going to do with that money. What do you think? Congregation is going to be involved in this planning process throughout. This is the last awareness meeting, so congratulations. You've slipped under the wire, which is very, very good. I appreciate you guys being here. It's very, very, very good. I'm running out of time. Not too badly, though. If you leave here with nothing else, practically speaking, I want you to leave here with this. November 12th at 9:15, between the services, we're having a congregational meeting to officially vote on the idea to have the capital campaign or not have the capital campaign. That's the question that will be asked at that meeting. And again, I can't stress strongly enough, we're not going to be voting on a specific amount of money or a specific tier of what to accomplish, just to have the campaign or not have the campaign. November 12th, write it in your hearts and minds, and maybe in your calendar. Should we go ahead with the campaign, the campaign itself will happen between basically in the first half of 2018, and we will be engaging Havey and Associates to help us run that campaign, as to not put an undue amount of stress on our office staff, who has plenty to do right now. And then, like I say, it's a 5-year period of giving, and it's worth pointing out that our giving to the capital campaign is above and beyond our regular stewardship giving. We can't, it makes no sense for a household or for anybody or for our congregation to say, well, I'm giving, let's use a round number, I'm giving $100 a week. And so they have this capital campaign, so I'm going to take 50 of those dollars, and I'm going to give $50 to regular giving, and I'm going to give $50 to the capital campaign. We have, capital campaign or not, we have our regular expenses, I'll say what they are, to keep our church running, for the ministry, for the current ministries of our church, to keep the lights on, to keep the heat going, to pay salaries, the rest of it. And so the capital campaign giving is above and beyond our normal giving. And so we've seen these things recently in weeks of, signs of God's gracious presence. And what that is an attempt to build awareness that we are also entering into a time of our normal annual stewardship appeal. And in that same weekend of the 11th and 12th, we're going to be having our Commitment Sunday, what I've come to know as our Commitment Sunday, where we will take our commitments for our regular annual stewardship giving for 2018. So that's coming up certainly on that same weekend. So on the 11th and 12th, good weekend to be here for sure. Congregational meeting about the stewardship campaign, and our Commitment Sunday to commit to God what He's given us, what God's given us, right, for our annual giving for 2018. And, I wasn't here when we did the friendship room, but I'm so glad and thankful for the people who stepped out in faith and said, yeah, let's do this, because my family has benefited multi-fold, multi-times for that courageous decision to do that. And so we have a chance as a congregation now to do something for ourselves and to do something for those 4,000 households that are coming into the Oregon community. And I think it's really an important and wonderful time to be a part of this community because of that. So certainly, we all have prayer life. I have a daily prayer life, and you can pray about this. I believe prayer works. I really do. You can, peer pressure works, and I'm not saying which way pressure should be, but talk about this with the rest of the members in our community and say, hey, what do you think of that? What do you think about that guy with the hair, what he said? Do you think that's right? Maybe this has some merit. I don't know. I'm talking about Jeff Fisher. And most importantly, please, please, please make plans to be here on the 12th when we have our congregational vote for the capital campaign. And also the annual stewardship effort. Okay, I'm done talking, mercifully. We have a time for questions and answers. We have about 20 minutes for questions and answers, which is pretty good. We have some prompts here, which if you want to just ask this question, one of these questions, I think that's fine. If you have specific questions to ask, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to raise your hand, and we're going to ask you, we have note takers around here who are capturing these things, not because we want to single you out or zing you, because we want to gather all the thoughts and questions and return them back to the group of leaders who are working very diligently on this. And we want to, as Jeff said, we're here to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts. It could be a question. It could be a comment. We've heard a lot of great things about, well, why didn't you include this in any of your capital projects? I've heard twice now about the state of the lighting out in the parking lot at night, and that's been captured. So comments, questions, this is the time we want to hear from you. If you want to speak, I'll give you the mic. Please say your name, and then we'll answer your question to the best we can. If you have a piece of paper, Barb Newhouse will come and get that, and then we'll answer that up here. If you'd rather just put your question in writing, that's fine, and we'll go on from there. So, what do you all think about this? Questions, comments, feelings, Megan? And if you didn't sign in, you cannot be eligible for the door prize. So please make sure you see somebody to make sure we've recorded your presence here today. They're hoisting the tab into place. Fred, with his superhuman strength, is putting it up there. Questions? Carol, there we go.
About the top three, but I was wondering about the natural lighting. What kind of thing would you be doing? Knocking out a wall or what for natural lighting, for windows and things?
Yeah, I think, Carol, that's a good question. We had this question last night, and I'll answer that question in two ways. And one way is to illustrate, kind of where we are with this process. We've identified the idea that, we suffer from a sort of a lack of natural light in here. And should we go ahead with the campaign, and should we get to that stage of doing some work in our sanctuary, We will engage with creative professionals, with architects, and we'll go through a process with them to say, one of our goals, Mr. or Ms. Architect, it is that we want to have more natural light in here, and what are your ideas? They'll take a look at, things about, where is the sun during our worship time, and what are the practical limitations of our, the way our sanctuary is built. But yes, I think absolutely, there's opportunities to open up, you use the term knockdown wall, but, probably to open up, portions of this for more access to natural light, for sure. What would you like to know? Same. So Carol's question was, what about the chapel? Is that a brand new space where we're going to be opening up the, or increasing what we call the footprint or the mark we make on the earth? Or would we just renovate another room? I'll tell you, both things have been considered. When I did the study back in 2012 with the master planning piece, we took a look, and there is space to do a chapel, a new, from scratch, additional piece. People have also said, well, we have the choir room. That's a room that maybe is a bit underutilized, and could we fashion that into more of a chapel? But these are things to be determined when we should we get to that point. These are things to be determined in concert with our designer. So to be continued, I think, and again, to illustrate that this, decisions of that specificity have really not been made yet. Joanne.
I have a process question. It has to do with the advisor or the individual who is giving us suggestions about doing campaigns. I noted from your comments that we have over 1,000 members, but our weekly attendance is around 200. I don't know where we are in our budget in terms of giving for even this past year, but my question would be this. Obviously, the person chosen to advise on the campaign must have looked at our records of giving, looked at projections for new growth, and had advised you to really seriously consider the campaign. So I am assuming that there was a lot of discussion about whether or not we could succeed in meeting our goals, because the worst thing that would happen is if you have a campaign and it falls flat. So I'm assuming you got that good advice. My question is, will all the money for this, during this campaign, come from members, which we would hope the majority would, or are there other sources of funding that we could draw upon, other resources outside of our own members to help that campaign be successful?
Yeah, Joanne, thank you for mentioning that. I'll say a couple things, and I hesitate to guess Pastor might want to chime in on this one as well. When we called around, you're talking about Steve Havey, our campaign consultant. When we called around to the churches who had completed capital campaigns with Steve, many of them said we also had a multi-tiered approach, and we made our challenge goal and then some. So we were very heartened to hear that. In terms of your specific question about are there other sources of income? Now you asked specifically to run the campaign, to do the campaign itself, or to do the capital improvements? Because that's two separate sort of issues.
Well, but our goals, as you outlined.
Yes, thank you.
In order to be successful in achieving those, do we rely only on the revenue provided by members, or are there other ways of, because the community also uses our facility.
Yeah.
In a campaign, do you ever include other sources of revenue to
Sure. Yeah. So the question is, do the people that also have skin in this game, the scouts, the preschool, whoever else, are they potential participants in this? I appreciate that, and I'd like that recorded, because I think that's a question to my mind that has not come up, and I certainly would like to get some opinion from people on that. I will say that right now, I think the idea is that the money that's raised is money from the congregation. And in terms of these other organizations, now you mentioned about, are there grants, or often we think of Thrivent, having programs and that. I think it's a good idea to look into, and I think we're not there yet in terms of seeking those other sources of revenue out. But I think we should, potentially consider looking into it. One of the small things is, in terms of this construction loan that I mentioned, I know that there is it the endowment board or the endowment board or memorial board, one of those boards? Okay, thank you. So the cost of the campaign itself, of running that, there's been some interest on the part of the endowment part of this church in helping give some money toward that at a much more attractive set of terms than if we were to go to a bank or some other way to do it.
So do we have a campaign coordinator or a head? Would it be this gentleman that you just described? Who is going to lead the campaign?
Yep.
The overall leadership.
The question that Joanne asked is, who should we have the campaign? Who is the tip of the spear? Who leads that? And I think, yes, I think we, the benefit in hiring Steve is because this is what he does for a living. And he certainly would be leading and guiding us and helping us through the process. And we have congregational leadership also that would be a part of that. Yep. But I think, yeah, the consultant. Would you like to add in? And then we'll get Fred.
Just a couple of things.
In terms of advising us as to what is possible, one of the things that we heard from also from the other congregations that we communicated to get references and to verify, they said that over and over, they said, we just didn't think that we could accomplish this. They just did not believe that it was possible. And that's why they have such high recommendations for Steve Havey and Associates, because of the way in which he guides. That one of the keys is that 5-year, as opposed to a 3-year pledge, which is much more common. The 5-year pledge commitment, it helps to ease that balance between what is that larger gift and how do we maintain our current funding for our ministry itself. And then that makes it a little bit easier. The other thing is that typically what happens is you try to do a 3-year campaign, you get partway to your goal, and then you have to go and spend all these fees again for another group or the same group to come back and then do another 3-year campaign to finish it. And he says, why not just extend that out, and you're not having to spend that money twice. Let's just think more comprehensively about that. He also talked about how, as he approached us, he says that, the keys to this is that we don't set, as Aaron said, on a particular goal. We ask the blessing to raise as much as God will provide through the faithfulness of our congregation. And typically, he says, we see that a typical congregation will raise somewhere between 3 and 5 times its annual contributions regularly. And so that's kind of how he gave us some perspective. And we were, to be honest, we were scratching our heads going, really? Is that possible? We were having our own crisis of faith. But as we went and interviewed these other churches, they said, we had the same fear